Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly and love and sisterly affection. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, executive producer of Light Thief Productions. He, they pronouns. We've got a great show for you today. We're gonna be talking to some special guests from the Cannonball Festival with the BIPOC New Work presentation track. And we'll also, I'm not certain that they're going to make it, but we're supposed to be talking to some folks from Curio Theater about Lady Day. But first, I wanted to talk about a little bit, remind everybody it's Women's History Month. For Women's History Month this week, I did want to say sorry about last week. Had a really bad cold, and being the person on camera, it's not great to be on camera with a really bad cough and cold. So sorry I canceled last week's show, but we're back this week, and just a few lingering effects. The quote for today is "I identify as what I am" by Andreja Pejic. Andreja is a trans woman who is a model and has been very active in the trans rights movement for many years and has some great quotes. Feel free to look up her information, and it's interesting to see I've been involved in fashion my entire life. My mother was a creative director for several fashion companies and ad agencies. I've known, models and photographers and people like that my whole entire life. And it's interesting to see coverage that's a few years old of Andreja's statements, because as I was researching it, I was looking at old posts by Vogue and other companies, and it's fascinating that the changes in how trans women are referred to, how women in general are referred to, in even in the last few years, even in something as accepting or as open as the fashion and culture industry. It's not like anybody was denying her the ability to work. She's beautiful and she's the right proportions that you get work as a fashion model that way. But there were some interesting commentary, including things like she was the star of one runway show, and the commentary was, but she's a man. No, she's a woman, but that's okay. I guess we can forgive those things in history, in hindsight, and look at them in their time when they happened. At any rate, we're going to be talking a little bit about the UC townhouses, the townhouses in University City that are low income. The property has been sold. And the former owner is trying to clear the property of residents so that the new owner can demolish the property and build new townhomes, new condos on the site. We'll be talking about the DC Blockade becoming a COVID super spreader event. All those truck drivers are now coming, the leadership is now all coming down with a bad cough. And we'll talk a little bit about how COVID isn't really over either. Lots of folks in government within the past 3 or 4 days have said, oh, hey, I tested positive for COVID today. Speaking of government, we'll talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson's SCOTUS hearings. Some interesting little comments that have come, comments that have come around, and we'll talk about Black resistance and Twitter fails. But at any rate, the first thing I want to do is bring up on screen my guest for the day. We have from the Cannonball Festival, we've got Nathan, we've got Danielle, and we've got Ben. Why don't we start with introductions? Nathan, if you would, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Alford-Tate. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a performer here in Philly, but in this setting, I am one of the lead producers for the Cannonball Festival as well for the BIPOC New Work presentation track.
Awesome, awesome. And Danielle, next, if you would please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi everyone, my name is Danielle. My pronouns are she, her, and I am producing my first ever long form performance as a burlesque performer and persona as Sophie Sucre.
Great. I love burlesque. I love burlesque personas. Some of my best friends are both burlesque artists, and then I'm friends with their burlesque persona as well. Ben, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hey everybody, my name is Ben Grinberg. I use he, him pronouns. With Nate, I'm another one of the Cannonball producers. And I'm also producing Mini Ball, which is our upcoming mini festival, which Sophie Sucre will be a part of. So I'm super excited about that.
Awesome, awesome. This answers a question that my associate producer Meg had. She was asking about Sophie, and I, of course, did not put two and two together. She was asking if you were here or not because we had miscommunication on dates and times. But hey, Meg, Sophie's here. So let's start with you, Danielle. Tell us a little bit about your piece. So it's the first time you're doing a uh, fully produced burlesque piece, and what's that like? What's the story?
Yeah, well, I have to say an immense and huge thank you both to Nathan and to Ben because I would never have done this had this opportunity not come my way. So I moved to Philadelphia as a dancer out of college, and around that same time started doing burlesque. Right when I moved to Philadelphia, so I've been doing burlesque now for about 13 years, and as you do burlesque in this resurgence of time of burlesque, the performance is about, 3 minutes to like 8 minutes max. Like it's not very long because you're in a set with other people. And in the time that I've been doing burlesque, I've also been freelancing as a dance artist with other choreographers and dance companies here in Philadelphia. And I never thought to take the opportunity to put those two things together and present a work both as myself as Danielle, but also like what the persona of Sophie or the idiom of burlesque could do. And so that's what this piece is. It's me taking the long form. So I'm harkening back to when burlesque was being performed in the sort of biggest golden era of the era around the 40s to the 60s of that time period. People were performing most often in sets where they would be 35 to 45 minutes. So a performer would take that entire time to perform an act. And then 30 minutes later, another performer would have like a 35 to 45-minute set. So I'm doing a 40-minute, it's coming to about performance, burlesque performance, but also that asks questions about how do I find agency and power inside of the performance of, but also experience of eroticism or sensuality, and what does that mean when my Black woman body is put into that sort of open realm. How do I maintain my safety? How do I maintain my agency? Um, And also, how do I allow myself to be that open and vulnerable? And what does it mean? How do I prepare for that? So all of that is a part of the performance. Those are the questions that I asked myself as I created the piece. I'm really excited and nervous to do it. But again, thank you to Ben and Nathan for pushing me over the edge.
It is, I mean, some of those questions we, as Black artists, have to answer all the time, even if we're not doing something like burlesque, where we're putting even more of ourselves out there. So the part of the Cannonball Festival that you're here representing, Nate, is the BIPOC New Work presentation track. Tell us a little bit about how this part of the festival came about and what it means to be representing this part of the festival.
Absolutely. It's you know, Ben, myself, and a few of the other producers within Almanac felt that it was really important to have this a part of this year's Cannonball Festival and moving forward, making sure that it's something that it is continuing to evolve. This is our first mini ball presentation, and this will be the second year that we've done Cannonball. So we wanted to really grow and evolve alongside this festival, making it as integrated into the festival as possible. So we're definitely excited to create this opportunity for BIPOC artists to present new work, either completely new work never before seen, or potentially work that might have gone through a lot of revisions, and there might be a desire to present it again in front of a new audience.
Awesome, amazing, fantastic. Ben, before the show, we said you were just going to jump in for things like dates. Also, feel free to jump in during the commentary section. I don't mind. So, where and when can folks see the Cannonball and the Mini Ball Festival? And where can they get tickets and such?
Absolutely. Yes. So Mini Ball is our mini festival that's happening very soon in like less than 2 weeks, April 3rd to the 8th, as part of Philly Theater Week. And in addition to Sophie Sucre, Danielle's full-length show, we have 6 other shows, which like kind of run the gamut between contemporary circus and intimate, like kind of immersive shows, and to other shows that are really asking questions around like identity and erotic performance as well. So it's going to be a really, really interesting festival. And we also are doing a bunch of like extension events, which are free. And we're hoping the weather stays nice because we're going to have the beer garden at the Moss building again. So it's hopefully going to be a really vibrant place where audiences can come and see not one, but multiple shows back to back. And in the meantime, have a community experience where they're running into people maybe that they know, or maybe meeting people for the first time and discussing the themes that come out of the work. So that's April 3rd to the 8th at the Moss Building in South Kensington. The address is 1320 North 5th Street, and all of the information is on our website at cannonballfestival.org/miniball. But you can just go to cannonballfestival.org and you'll see the link to click on right there. And then, yeah, what Nate is talking about, the BIPOC New Work track, is an open call that we have right now. So if there are any artists or any BIPOC artists who are watching, I highly encourage you to check it out. The opportunity comes with a $2,500 stipend and then a full like co-production opportunity like we do with all Cannonball artists, but obviously there's no fee that you need to pay. And that opportunity is for shows that would be presented between September 1st and September 30th as part of the Philadelphia Fringe Festival at one of 2 venues, either the Icebox Project Space or at the Moss Building Studio. So there's a lot of flexibility. We can feel like we can handle a wide variety of different kinds of work. So please check it out. Please spread the word. The open call is open until April 15th. So that is also available at cannonballfestival.org/open call. But again, cannonballfestival.org.
Awesome. And Meg's putting these links in our chats, so folks can click on the link. It should pop open a new window for you. You'll be able to go buy your tickets and see or if you're an artist, submit for the artists, and we'll hopefully see you there. So. Interestingly, like some of the topics that you're touching on with your thoughts on your piece, Danielle, are interrelated with one of the things that I brought up during the intro, which is there was a tweet. So Twitter's an interesting ecosphere. There's a tweet sent out by a white woman, or purportedly a white woman, that the masking was so traumatic for me. The first day I was turned away from the 3 grocery stores for refusing to wear one. It was one of the worst days of my life. I cried in the car for a half an hour, went home, and haven't been the same since. There's been some investigative reporting done by some folks that are friends of mine that are just were interested in it, so they looked into this person, and their presumption is that she's not actually a white woman, but in reality a bot, an account set up to create controversy, but. It's funny because it's more unifying than anything, I think. Like the number of people who take issue with such a statement is relatively universal, and like kind of if I was trying to be a propagandist, I would think this one in particular backfired. But in response, a lot of people were saying that the fact that BIPOC people don't march and protest every day is a testament to our character. And the response that I found most accurate to that is a black man named Johnny J. Jones. He's a creator. Excuse me. He wrote, "I say this with no snark, but every form of black resistance is met with extreme violence in this nation. It's not character, it's ultimately survival that prevents us from pushing back daily." And so I just like to riff on that idea because I think it's accurate and important. I think that it's also kind of revealing when we as people of color, we as black men and women perform resistance actions, unless there is the support of a wide coalition that includes whiteness, it tends to fall victim to multiple forms of violence, like microaggressions, direct aggressions, people finding a way to throw the leadership of those actions under the bus, or finding a way to denounce those leaders. So over the course of history, a lot of times the first way that black people have reached out into resisting the white patriarchy is through the arts. How would you say that influences your choice, Danielle, to do this piece, to do this full-length piece? How did you come about choosing to go this route, or is it not that deep? Am I going too deep?
No, I think you draw a lot of parallels and perhaps intersections about, I think, the choices that I as a Black woman artist have made. Um, I think most the one that's coming to mind at the moment is the consideration around why to do this piece, um, in the sense that, well, for one, I've been living inside of this performance practice of burlesque now for a period of time, and it's been within a certain confines. So I'm allowing myself the opportunity to like riff, as you said, like on just through the idiom of burlesque. I've often akin burlesque to like what it must be like, I guess, to be a jazz musician, in the sense that like you have structures and things that you learn, but then there's space inside to like play and go about. I think a parallel or an intersection there is that regardless of what I'm doing, whatever I'm investigating or interested in, there is going to be perception and assumptions based on me, just because of my skin and just because of my gender expression, perhaps, right? So, I could put on something gold that's short and shakes. And regardless of what my intention was, someone out there is going to think I'm doing a Josephine Baker tribute, right? That's always like a thing that's happening. In terms of safety and survival, as was mentioned in that response, um, you know, I I personally think that the practice and performance of burlesque for me is not necessarily, um, in the past it would have been considered sex work, and I have way too much respect for actual sex workers to put myself in that bracket. So I think I am definitely sex work adjacent, but there is how our society has come to engage with sensuality and eroticism in the public that I have to contend with as a performance artist, as a person. Um, and so
Yeah, I
all of
mean,
those
there's
things.
always the pushback. There's always the pushback. Like, there's always the pushback of on sex work in general, on any sort of arts, because like it's. I don't know why is it so easy for people to classify the arts as purient in nature. Like, why
I would push to say that part of that is, as you mentioned, like the white, the how do I want to put it? The white colonialist sort of like way in which our Western society has been taught to archive and put things in hierarchies, right? So like we've been trained to learn the arts through an understanding of like time periods and hierarchies, and like so and so was the founder of, or so and so was this, and like there are whole swaths of people that are probably left out of those considerations when we consider like foundings, fathers. So that being said, I think we're also living through history. And so we are in this presence, I think, making refining and clear moments of this is the spectrum of what art is or what performance is. In my case, I'm bringing burlesque and dance. I mean, they've always been together, but I'm now bringing it together in a new way, I hope, I feel. Um, and that is a part of my survival. I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to present that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting, like in this time, that I mean, you do have to protect yourselves, and Nate and Ben, feel free to jump in at any time. Like, don't stand on ceremony. Like, I like to have these conversations. Um, so
can I just
go ahead.
put one more thing in? I'm sorry, but I wanted to say it before it fell out of my head,
Yeah, go ahead.
which was someone that I'm also very much inspired by, who also is a part of my piece, is Audre Lorde and her work and her writings. And something that she said it around the time that I think she was like living with cancer and like surviving and living. And she said, it's self, um, I'm going to be paraphrasing. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but essentially like self-care is an act of survival. It's
Hmm.
an act of like political warfare or something like that, meaning like just the act of surviving, in her case as a black lesbian woman in this white patriarchal society, surviving with cancer, trying to get hers, trying to like live a full life. And so I apply that to a lot of the ways in which I have to engage and take in. And so just trying to hold all of those pieces.
Yeah, it's a lot to hold on to as well. I find it interesting. You know, there is an element. So even in so I would say that self-care is an act of resistance. In that paraphrase, to relate it back to the quote that I said earlier. It you know, living as a relatively free to choose what I want to do black person is difficult. I've gone over this a few times. Specifically with reference to things like, like this white woman complaining that, mask mandates were destroyed her life. Like if that's something that's going to destroy your life, and regardless of whether this was a bot or not, the sentiment has existed, has been said in public by people that are, like actually at scenes of protesting things, and like the sentiment exists, like that this is the worst thing that has ever happened to white suburbia, is that oh my God, we have to wear masks to protect ourselves from a deadly virus. How dare everyone? But like I think there was a lot of prediction that mask use and adoption and vaccine use and adoption amongst the black community was going to be lower than the white community, and actually it turned out that the lowest adoption rate was by conservative white men, followed closely by conservative white women. Um, and I think that that is interesting from the fact that there's legitimate historical reasoning behind a black person's hesitance to get a vaccine, whereas I don't think I can't think of an example of whiteness that has been affected negatively by the medical community in experimentation. Um, However, we have that sentiment out there, and I think if you really analyzed it from a black perspective, black people are like, I wear a mask every day anyway. Like I'm always wearing a mask when I'm dealing with people. Anyhow, I don't get to say everything that I want to say because there are consequences to saying things, regardless of whether it's freedom of speech. Um, so yeah, we're free to speak, but there are consequences, and we all face those consequences every day. So speaking of freedom of speech and black resistance, I wanted to move on to the University City Townhomes. In case you guys aren't familiar with it, or my audience isn't familiar with it, at 40th and Market Street, on the southeast corner, there is a set of low-income housing townhomes that were built specifically as low-income housing. It's a property right in really prime real estate growth right now, because it's right on the edge of Penn and Drexel's campuses. It's literally like the last property. The properties all up to that property have all been bought by Penn and Drexel interests and or developers to develop for college student interest, shops, restaurants, housing, etc. Um, the details of the sale and purchase of the property haven't been made public, but estimates put it at somewhere around $3 to $4 million. And that is not in any way what it was originally paid for it or the value of the housing that's there. The residents of the housing were given a relatively short notice. I believe it was 90-day notice to vacate on the sale, and they've been fighting to either one, completely nullify the sale and keep it as low-income housing, or two, just give them more time to find new housing, because a lot of those residents have been there for 30 or 40 years. Those families have been there for 30 or 40 years, and finding new housing in this market is not very easy, especially low-income housing in the city of Philadelphia. So they've had several protests, several protest actions. It's been relatively lowly reported on. Not much attention is being paid to it. And I wonder. I mean, I have my opinions on why it's not getting much media attention, but like, what would it take? And this is to all of you in general, to get a lot of attention on something like this.
I mean, it sucks, right? I mean, it's like, this is a pattern. Like, this is not the first time that this has happened. Like, that entire neighborhood has been kind of forcibly gentrified by those large, institutions and university interests since the 40s, right? And like, I don't know. It's so I do know that there's a big push today to try to get people talking about a bill that's trying to get into committee at city council that would be about land justice. The Philadelphia Coalition for Affordable Communities is organizing kind of like a social media push to kind of get people talking about this bill, which would basically put vacant lots and abandoned properties in community control, so that there wouldn't be this problem, at least in those cases, of like developers in the city selling those properties to interests who would be from outside of these neighborhoods, which could, definitely be a start, and it's something that's super important. But yeah, I don't. It's also like, I'm wondering if it's like the attention question that you're asking. Like, it feels related to this bot thing. Like, it's hard to pay attention. It's hard to know what's real, I guess, and it's hard to know what's factual when there are literally bots that are making up the most controversial things ever that are designed to get a response out of people. Like, that, it just seems like, yeah.
One thing I always wonder though is why. So like, we as artists constantly do things to grab the public attention, right? Like, why? And we're mostly like liberally minded, but we apply this skill set all the time only to getting attention on fictional things, or like things that we're making a statement in, but the statement is kind of like not the thing that we push forward. We make the statement. Don't get me wrong. I think our artwork is important, but like, in the modern era, it's not as hit you in the face as a bot saying like, I got turned away from three grocery stores and cried in my car for a half an hour, right? So what is the hesitation? What causes? And this is just a question I've always had, and I have repeatedly, and I know I guess the answer is ethics, but what is the hesitation behind not using the same tactics of, like this kind of throw it out there, throw out the most controversial idea and then get the attention and then sell the idea?
I mean, I guess it's still arguable. Like, I'm just not sure if it actually works. Like, we have actually only become more polarized and more. Well, I don't know if that's actually true, but like, and I would just say, like, I'm one of the reasons why I'm so excited about like Cannonball as a platform and for like presenting hour-long works by independent artists is because like it's actually a direct response to that, right? Like Danielle's show, Sophie Sucre, I'm going to watch that show and I'm going to have a real, complex, nuanced, embodied experience that is going to teach me so much more and make me feel so many more things and contribute to a conversation in a much more detailed and complicated way than a single controversy generating tweet ever could, or any tweet ever could, right? And like, I think it's so important to continue to fight to make space for like that kind of engagement and embodiment and, attention, because I think it's so difficult. Like, I think it's so difficult because in my experience outside of that, of like a theatrical space, like, I can't even get like, I can't even get through like a news article now. It's like a 5-minute read because I'm like, oh, there's 7 more emails and 5 million more tweets. Like,
well, that's the thing. Like the tweets get the attention because they're tiny and it's a bite-sized thing, and you can jump down a rabbit hole, I suppose. Like I do it all the time, but and like follow the links and follow the information. But even this platform that I'm building, by having these shows, like even this, I have to concentrate on the attention getting and then have the conversation. Like it's not the same. Like in my social media posts, like I am posting and reposting these kind of controversial things because how else do I get viewership? Like, right? I don't know.
Like marketing and capitalism. It's like,
Go,
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a hard time with social media. I think I'm of the generation that came in when Facebook was still for college students. So like I feel like you were all there with me, right? So it's strange. I think there's just something about how much of oneself one wants to put out onto the interwebs. And I say this as a burlesque performer who shows my tits, like it's hard. Like it's a balance, right? And so like I only use, I think, Instagram at this point. Like I've kind of fallen off of Facebook and I don't use Twitter. And I think that one, we're like connected to so many people in a way that hasn't really been the case. And when you do it in multiple platforms, you're connected and like in and utilizing these things. And so like we're in all of that you're, taking and digesting. And then it's like extremes of, right? And so my hope is my goal is to be just as, I want to have as deep a connection with actual people as I do with folks that I can meet online. And I think you asked that question, like, how do you get people to care? I think that's part of it. Like we have to and I'm a bit of a hermit, I'm a bit internal, but like we have to go out and engage with and be in the neighborhoods and see it actively affecting people. That publicly engaged process, not the publicly engaged process for like grants and for funding language. I'm talking about the actual like community gathering, the community meetings, the people who are doing the work, in the areas, in the neighborhoods, in the streets.
Well,
you ask those people and they will definitely point you to all of the resources.
I mean, so one of the things you talk about there is doing the work, and forgive me if I'm getting your meaning incorrect, but just to transliterate that into something that non-activists would understand, doing the work in this case means actually being in the community and affecting change one person at a time.
Or listening to those community members already there and finding out how you can crystallize what the community already knows about itself and what it needs to survive and thrive. Absolutely.
And what I would say is that in a segue sort of way is that people are finding out that doing the work is hard. It's harder than being a Twitter personality. It's harder than being a YouTuber. It's harder than being a podcaster. Doing the work involves a lot of talking and a lot of listening and a lot of on the ground work. It's a job in and of itself, aside from whatever else you want to do with your life. In reference to that, I'm segueing here to the DC blockade, the so-called freedom convoy, the non-truck driving truck drivers who have been harassing Washington, D.C. for a few weeks. This past weekend, the leadership, the main organizer, took a short break over the weekend he said it was over the weekend. I don't know if he's been back yet. I haven't seen reports about that, but took a break to go home and be with his family for the weekend. because they've been in DC for about 2 weeks. And in the DC area, they've been in Maryland, in Hagerstown. But several of the other upper echelon of the organizers of this blockade have also gone to emergency care and or urgent care with a severe cough, and one of them classified it as the worst feeling he's ever felt. They're ostensibly the main purpose of this blockade is to protest the vaccine and mask use mandates, most of which have the mask use mandates anyway have been eliminated, and so it's just. Whew, that's pure irony right there. I don't know how much more irony you can get, but my irony meter is off the scale. And the reason why I wanted to segue to this is to talk about, like that is the work. Like they're learning, these folks that have been doing all this via social media, have been just hiding behind the anonymity of social media and the ease of social media to try and amplify their voice, which is really easy. Social media is a really easy way to amplify a very small opinion, a group of very small opinions. They've been using social media to amplify their voice, and now they're finding that when they have to do the actual work, it's actually very difficult. So what I think that a lot of folks that aren't artists probably don't appreciate is how much work there goes into, even something like bringing a festival to fruition, or even a single act in that festival to fruition. What would you say, like each of you can answer this, what would you say is like, the percentage wise of like what you see on stage versus how much time you spend in the background getting that all ready? Anybody can go.
I'll jump in only to say, like, and then I definitely want to hear from Nate and Danielle, but like, yeah, like it's so much work, and I think it's this is another reason why I feel like Cannonball as a thing is something that I'm super excited about and driven by right now, because I've had 8 or 9 years of being an independent producer, mainly of my own work, and so I know exactly how much that takes, and it is definitely a full-time job, and it's like something that's so under-resourced that, like, not only are you doing the work to create your actual piece of art and produce your actual piece of art, rent a space, get all of the equipment you need, find a way for there to be designers, do this marketing thing that we've been talking about, which is like, how the hell do you get people to care about experimental contemporary circus? Like, I don't know. People don't know what that is, and you have to like explain what it is and create a piece that like explains itself as it goes on. And yeah, so hundreds and hundreds of hours of rehearsal, but then like all of this other labor in producing, and then like fundraising and building resources is like this other part of it. Like how do you, and so many artists are in a position where like they're working full-time jobs to support themselves, pay their rent, and then on top of that they're working on this other full-time job, which is producing and creating their work, right? And so I just think there's a real need. Like what we've noticed is like for independent artists who are underground, or who are like trying to say something that hasn't been said, or don't fit into like a regional theater or like professional dance company kind of mold, right? Who want to be making their own work, who have these really important cultural things to say that we've been talking about. In Philadelphia, at least, like it's been a long time since there have been a lot of robust and consistent opportunities for people to have help on all of those other things that aren't creating their work. And so that's one of the reasons why I think Cannonball is so important, I guess. Like, how do we start to have these platforms where like we're going to do that some of that work for you. We're going to, talk about your show so you don't have to talk about it. We're going to give you the space. We're going to do the install of the lights. We're going to take as much of that extra burden of the producing and hopefully some of the marketing off of the plates of the independent artists so that they can focus a little bit more time on, their actual artistic work and honing that piece. And then, the other part of it is the longer term vision. How do we begin to make this work sustainable for people, for artists? And so that's sort of what we're in the middle of right now as a festival. We have this opportunity. We're okay, come hell or high water, we're going to at least put together this little pool of money, $2,500 for at least 3 of these BIPOC projects. We feel like that's super important. But, we're trying to fundraise so that we can pay ourselves as producers a living wage to be doing this work. Which is a multi-year goal. It's far off. And hopefully we're going to arrive to a place where we can be able to create sustainable opportunities for all of these kinds of independent artists, and so we're in a really big fundraising platform, fundraising mode right now, just to try to be able to change that equation. So it's not everyone is exhausted and working a full-time job just to be able to, on their nights and weekends and, whenever they're not working, be exhausting themselves. But people can take care of Audre Lorde, self-care is an act of resistance, right? So that we can take care of ourselves and do this work because it is crucial and it is so important, especially for voices that don't often get these opportunities. Because that's the other reality, right? That's why the BIPOC new work track is so important, because it's why was I able to make an independent piece of work? Is because I'm white and because I had I didn't graduate from college with student loans. That is the reason. That is the reason. And so, how do you begin to create equitable, more slowly start to begin to create a more equitable ecosystem and platform, Okay, I ranted.
It's okay. Nathan, tell us a little bit about the work that goes into it outside of what you see on stage.
For sure. I was gonna say rant away. Definitely. I think even just in regards to the BIPOC track, I'm in the process of finding others that will be panelists in order to decide on okay, who would be great people to be on the panelists. I might bring more of a theatrical experience, but we want the panelists to be as diverse as we want the applicants to be, in terms of their performance background, their different things of that nature. So there's that search, and then the process of going through the applications and different things like that. And that also exists within the Cannonball series in general, of seeing reviewing applications. Can we logistically support this piece? Why or why not? And, how do we, as Ben, beautifully said, how do we continue to create more equitable systems for independent artists to not only survive, but also thrive in?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sorry, I was cleaning my glasses there and couldn't switch back. So Daniel, what would you say on this topic? What is we started off the day talking about how you've been thinking about these things that are parts of a burlesque piece, and I don't think that most folks that don't do some sort of art realize that artists, we're constantly working on stuff. It's not even it doesn't even stop when you go to bed, at least not for me. I don't know about for you all, but when I go to sleep, I'm still thinking about whatever project I'm working on. What would you say is there a cutoff? Is there a time when you're not working?
No, not at all. But I think no, there's not. But it's all a matter of balance, I guess. I'm falling back. I'm hesitating because I'm realizing it's an internal world. Like your internal world just becomes very dense when you're working on something and you start to think all the pathways start to open, and so you get kind of lost in the weeds. Um, but to just go back for a minute and revert back, I just want to acknowledge like what Nathan was just talking about in terms of like the work of like the administration side, and what Ben was talking about in terms of the having the full-time job, and still like I think uh, we see overall, like when you pull resources, when you lose a lack of funding as a culture, as a society, when we treat art, what happens is that the artists become the administrators, become the folks holding the foundations together. And so much of our understanding of art has been this sort of acceptance of the fact that like we're not supposed to have, or we don't have, or we're always thinking of how can we without. And I would hope that part of the work is to advocate for not just bringing back the funding, but like continuing to push forward and be progressive in how we think about art as a part of society. Therefore, like artists should have livable wages, and artists should be, something that's widely understood and considered as like a methods of career and methods of life. And also what it's doing, it's how we archive history. It's how we assure that many voices speak to the tapestry of
And
history.
it's
Um,
it's super important, I think, that we recognize that, yeah, the art. One of the things that has happened in, I would say, since the advent really of kind of advertising, and the use of art in advertising, is that a lot of the general zeitgeist is that art is disposable as well. And we need to get it out there that art isn't disposable. It isn't something that we can do without. It is integral to the health of society as much as any other aspect, and the health of an individual, as much as any other aspect. As much as knowing how to add 2 plus 2, you need to know how to express yourself artistically. I think we should be concentrating on that. I want to, with the last 5 minutes here, just go delve into the nomination hearings of hopefully our next Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. You'd think I could say Jackson, it's my last name, but I cannot sometimes. Anyway, and also, it kind of goes to some of the things that we've been talking about today. It's really hard to find something not nice to say about this jurist. She's very good at what she does. She's very even-handed. So it's also very easy for the negative to get amplified in this situation, because the negative is easier to talk about, right? Like, it's easier to talk about. I was just, I was thinking about how I was going to approach this topic, and there's all these things coming out from the Republican Party about how she's this or she's that, that are supposedly negatives for a Supreme Court justice. I don't want to concentrate on any of those, because they're A, bullshit, and B, it's super easy to concentrate on those things because it's the only thing that anybody's saying. Nobody's saying how, oh, she's actually overqualified to be a member of the Supreme Court. She's been making decisions like this that influence the law in America for, what is it, 35 years now or something like that. She's an active and even-handed jurist who doesn't seem to sit on a side. She's apolitical, which is quite frankly amazing in this day and age. How do you be an apolitical jurist in modern America political landscape? But she's as close as it gets, how do you, and so we they're having confirmation hearings. Confirmation hearings, uh, I suppose back in the day might have been interesting. Right now, I'm finding them to be like just a bunch of people talking to hear themselves talk. Um, I, like, why are we going to take somebody like, a really well qualified legal expert, black woman, and sit her there in front of a bunch of idiots that are politicos who like literally don't seem to know anything, and make her answer their questions for like 10 hours a day for like a week straight, right? Like, I would lose my mind. um, anyway, I find these confirmation hearings amusing in that way. It seems like, like people are just saying whatever they want to say, but I do want to bring up that I don't have it here. I want to quote it exactly because I would get the quote wrong because I've heard this quote in paraphrase many times said to me. Um, Stand by. Senator Kennedy just told Judge Jackson that she's articulate. I'm
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. This is not the first or the last time Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to have to hear that about herself. And I'll drop that.
I mean, go on. I mean,
Her face. She's like, so she has experienced this already, right? Like she has to sit through this process, but she has already experienced it and will continue to, unfortunately. And she is prepared and she is guarded and she has the things that she needs. But, you know,
what I want to say is, as a black woman, I'm sure you've experienced it more frequently than us black guys have experienced it. But even black men experience this whole, like, putting us through something like a confirmation hearing is not going to result in us crying and talking about how much we like beer. We're just going to be like, yeah, go on. I heard it before, like, yeah, I mean, I would lose my mind. I would be like, hype. I would be like, yeah, ask me that question again. Yeah, go ahead. Call me articulate again. Let's see where we go with this. You want to, but,
I love that some of the answers that I've heard from her, she beautifully says like, that really wouldn't be in my job description or in my purview. That's not even something that I would even focus on. But sure, I'll answer. It's as you were saying, like who is this hearing really for? And who is it to benefit? Yeah.
right. Yeah, like, Supreme Court justices don't decide on the length of sentences for convicted felons. So why does it matter what her conviction record or her sentencing record is like? Things like that. And Supreme Court is as far removed from criminal enforcement as it gets in the judicial system. Like, why is anybody worried about whether she's soft on, quote unquote, soft on crime or not? And she's not. But let's go ahead and buy the argument. Why is anybody worried about it? We're talking about Supreme Court justice here. Anyway, I just wanted to get into that for the last 5 minutes. I appreciate you guys joining me today. I do want to recognize the time. It's 11:01. Thank you for staying an extra minute. The whole idea of making this really well qualified person sit in front of a panel of idiots and answer whatever questions they come up with is just fascinating to me. Could probably make it into a reality TV show or something. Like have Neil deGrasse Tyson answering flat earthers questions or something. I think he'd probably lose his mind. He's one of the calmest dudes out there. Anyway, so I want to thank you for joining me. Any last thoughts? Any last things that you want to throw out there? And we'll start with Nate. Any last thoughts that you want to throw out there for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's resonating with me right now is balance that Danielle brought up a little bit earlier, and been brought up also, just in regards to we are grateful to be in this space where we can provide assistance and co-producing work, and so I definitely want as many people as possible to get applications in, apply for the new track and for Cannonball in general. We would love to help co-produce your work, as many folks as we possibly can. And we will definitely try to do as many folks as we possibly can. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And Danielle, any last thoughts?
Just nice to be here. Nice to finally see your faces. I look forward to meeting you in person, Nathan and Ben. James, thank you for having me. To those out in the interwebs, it was nice to be here. And if you're curious about burlesque, maybe you've heard about it, but you haven't seen it, I strongly suggest you consider coming to see the show, Sophie Sucre. If you have seen burlesque, come see if it's a little different. You'll also get to meet me, Danielle, which I don't really share with the burlesque world. So thank you for letting me be here.
Awesome. Ben, any last thoughts?
This is a great conversation. Thank you so much for including me and for inviting us on. Yeah, every time we were talking, I felt like we could have spun out and just talked about that one topic for like another hour. And that's my segue, because I'm also going to plug stuff because it's my job. So in addition, right, like we have these thoughts, something comes up, we're like, we should talk about that more. We have lots of extension programming as part of Mini Ball. So there's going to be those opportunities, right? What comes up as part of a show. We're also having free events where we're working with different organizations in the city, like Project Safe or Penn Environment, to kind of extend, or Thinking Dance, to kind of extend like the content that comes up in a show into that conversation, so we can keep it going and hopefully affect change and talk in a more direct way, because like art can be kind of oblique. So then we get to have these conversations. So definitely check that out too. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited for the festival. And really, I think it's great that you're creating this platform. So thank you for having us here.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm going to switch you guys off screen. This is going to be me on screen. Feel free to stick around if you want to hear me like blather on, but or want to talk to me after the show. If not, feel free to drop off, and thank you for joining us. And everybody out there, please, check out the site. The links are in the chats. And go see this wonderful performance pieces that are out there available. They're talking about important things. They're talking about topics like we're talking about today. And it's a learning opportunity every time you're exposed to another culture, another expression of culture. It's an opportunity for you to get more familiar with what's going on out there in the world, and do the work of listening, do the work of understanding directly what's going on. If you like what you've seen today, or if even if you just want to support independent media, please consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. We have memberships for as little as $1 a month. $5 a month gets you some behind-the-scenes access and information that the general public does not get on our upcoming projects and things that we're doing. Please hit the like button. Hit on Facebook. All the react buttons help our information get out there further, promotes it to your friends, your family, the people that you interact with on Facebook, and gets these messages a little bit further. Just hitting the like button, subscribing to the Facebook page, Light Thief Productions on Facebook, Light Thief Productions on Twitter and YouTube as well. So look us up on there. Hit the subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube. Hit the like button on YouTube, and just show us some love. It's a free way to help promote the show, help promote other people's shows, as we do here, and we will really appreciate anything that you can do to get our audience out there further. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, we'll have another show for you next week, and we look forward to seeing you then. Next week will be the 30th. Looks like we have Connie Norwood, director of Terminus at South Camden Theater Company. And so look forward to talking to Connie next week, and see you all then. And we'll be back next week. So enjoy the rest of your week.